מה? גדול, שמאלה, קצת שמאלה מהקודם. עוד אחד ימינה. לא סיפרתי לו עדיין.
מהשיווקי זכה בצלמים המבטיחים שלו יותר.
אחי, מה, אני ילד אחי? איפה, זה לא מבטיח.
אתה לא מבטיח, אתה אחרי הפוטנציאל.
נעשה חדק, אני עושה אחד ל...
دكوس هذه الكاميرا اللي معك
دكوس
Gaza قبل المنتهى قبل المنتهى جنب الكويت هذه زقابيلات. ايوه بشكل تحت. وعم يزعق بالليل معاه مفتاح يوصل بالشرط نبيل.
لا تحمل هذا عليك هذا عليك
كانت قاعدة كل اثنين حق معاها
احنا بنعرف فكرة غير فاهمة مش
على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. حمده الله أكبر والحمد لله رب العالمين ما عنا وما لم نعلم اللهم إنك عفو.
Up with the latest figures. Since Hamas declared war on October 7, over 12,500 rockets have been fired at Israel, of which more than 2,000 have misfired and landed back inside the Gaza Strip, causing untold damage to people there. In the past day, the Air Force has struck a launch post from which rockets were fired at Israeli communities just yesterday. Over 1,200 victims of the 10/7 massacre have been identified to date. Total number of people injured since 10/7 requiring evacuation to hospital is 11,485. IDF fatalities since the start of the October 7th massacre stand at 466. That's up by 3 since yesterday's update. The whole nation mourns the deaths of Master Sergeant First Class Reserves Maoz Fenigstein, Captain Reserves Lior Sivan, and Captain Reserves Uriel Cohen, who all fell in battle yesterday. May their memories be a blessing. An update on the October 7th hostage crisis. Hamas is still holding 129 people hostage since 10/7. That's in addition to 4 hostages from before the massacre. Among those 129 hostages are 19 females and 110 males, 118 Israelis and 11 foreign citizens, 2 minors, the Bibas infants, and 10 people aged 75 and over, including the men in the Sikh, Hamas and Islamic Jihad propaganda videos. Included in those 129 hostages are at least 21 who have been murdered, with Hamas holding their bodies hostage. Israel demands that the Red Cross pressure Hamas to secure access to the hostages in its terror dungeons. It's just not good enough to say that that won't work, as President Miriana Spoljaric told Prime Minister Netanyahu last week. The Red Cross must at least try, and foreign governments must hold it accountable for its gross negligence and this flagrant abandonment of our hostages. We all saw that tweet from the Red Cross yesterday listing 11 groups that are protected under the rules of war, and we are horrified by the glaring omission of hostages from that list, which it's difficult to believe was entirely by accident. We demand that the Red Cross start drawing attention to the plight of those vulnerable hostages in the Hamas terror dungeons and pursue every avenue to visit and treat them before their release. We remain committed to that pledge. No one left behind. Some operational updates. Israeli forces continue their targeted operations against Hamas terrorists and infrastructure as we dismantle the Hamas terror state. Since 10/7, we have uncovered approximately 1,500 Hamas terror tunnel shafts and tunnel routes in the Gaza Strip, most of them under schools, hospitals, mosques, and yes, even UN facilities. We are continuing our targeted raids to uncover Hamas weapons caches, exposing weapons production sites and a large storage facility in Al-Atatra and Jabalia. We are acting to thwart Hamas's despicable human shield strategy and its deliberate attempts to endanger civilians and evade justice after its crimes against humanity. Over the past day, the IDF has struck over 300 terror targets in Gaza. Troops have located a truck with long-range rockets in Jabalia, uncovered underground terror infrastructure in the homes of Hamas terrorists in Khan Yunis, and seized weapons at military command centers in that town too. Israel also continues to expose how Hamas has militarized hospitals, jeopardizing their protected humanitarian status under international law. Yesterday, we revealed how the director of the Kamal Adwan Hospital in Jabalia confessed that Hamas had converted hospitals into military facilities and that he was in fact a high-ranking Hamas officer. This is the same Kamal Adwan Hospital from which dozens of Hamas terrorists surrendered last week with their weapons above their heads. Ahmed Kahalot told investigators that he was recruited to Hamas in 2010 at the rank of brigadier general, and the hospital retained Hamas military operatives as medical staff. Hospitals must be protected. They must be protected from Hamas. Unfortunately, too many international officials have been tacitly complicit with Hamas's crimes. Instead of demanding accountability, they cover up for Hamas, and they try to shift blame onto Israel to cover up that fact. We refer, for example, to recent calls by UN officials calling for an investigation into the Israeli raid on that hospital when they should be investigating how Hamas turned it into a military base right under their noses. We demand that the World Health Organization, Red Cross, and all other aid agencies active in Gaza condemn Hamas for waging war out of hospitals and jeopardizing their protected status, and we expect foreign governments to hold them accountable for failing to do so. We are deeply moved by Ayelet Levi Shahar, who is speaking out on behalf of her 19-year-old abducted daughter, Nahama. International condemnations, she says, have been too little and too late. We now know where the UN Women Organization was for the 55 days before it condemned Hamas's use of rape as a weapon of war. Their Deputy Chief of Peace and Security was busy endorsing over 150 anti-Israel tweets, and I hope you've seen that shocking report by UN Watch. That was more than negligence. This is the abandonment of Israeli women, and time is running out for them in the Hamas terror dungeons. An update on humanitarian aid. Israel still has excess capacity to increase aid deliveries to Gaza by 300%. Yesterday, Israel inspected 127 humanitarian aid trucks, which then entered Gaza through Rafah and Kerem Shalom, and we can screen up to 500 at the moment. If the aid entering Gaza is inadequate, interested parties should ask international donors why they are not sending more, Hamas why it is hijacking aid, and international agencies why they do not condemn Hamas's theft of aid. Sadly, parties who want to secure impunity for Hamas and cover up their own complicity with it are trying to deflect blame onto Israel. We categorically reject the despicable and libelous allegations that Israel is somehow obstructing the delivery of humanitarian aid into Gaza when we stand ready to facilitate 300% more. An update from the Northern Front. The IDF continues to respond forcefully to Hezbollah aggression on the northern border, striking launchers used to fire at Israel and the terrorists responsible. The situation in the north is intolerable, with 80,000 Israelis displaced from communities along the border and unable to return home. Hezbollah's systematic violations of UN Security Council Resolution 1701 have rendered it effectively null and void. After 2.5 months of ignoring our warnings to desist and cease its aggression, Hezbollah is now dragging Lebanon into an unnecessary war that would have devastating consequences for the Lebanese people. The time is now for the international community to act for the full implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701, because we are determined to restore security based on that resolution, pushing back Hezbollah. Unless and until a diplomatic solution is found and implemented, we will continue making the necessary preparations to remove that threat from our border. Finally, a diplomatic update. As the UN Security Council prepares for another vote, we are glad that Secretary General Antonio Guterres watched the Hamas atrocity video 74 days after the massacre. After that private screening, he said that what he saw was human beings at their worst. And we propose working that language into a UN Security Council resolution. And here is our text. Having resolved that the Hamas atrocities of the October 7th massacre showed human beings at their worst, the United Nations demands the worst people's unconditional surrender and the immediate release of the hostages. That is the only step the United Nations can take to advance international peace and security as Israel proceeds to dismantle the Hamas terror state in response to 10/7 and to bring the perpetrators of those barbaric atrocities to justice. That's all for today's update. We'll now take your questions through the Zoom. Thank you.
Next question is from Hannah Julian of the Jewish Press. Foreign Minister Eli Cohen today said Israel is coordinating a maritime corridor from Cyprus to Gaza to facilitate future transfer of goods. Will the Kerem Shalom and Erez crossings be permanently closed? And when is this likely to take place, if so?
Last week, Israel announced that the Kerem Shalom crossing would be opened temporarily as part of our understandings with the Americans, our American allies, to increase the flow of aid into Gaza. That's despite the fact that there is still excess capacity at the Nitzana crossing that is not being used, but we facilitated the use of the Kerem Shalom crossing temporarily. As part of those understandings, the United States has also undertaken to fund an upgrade of the Rafah crossing to ensure that in future all aid will be able to enter through Rafah and will not need to enter through Israeli crossings. The fact that aid is entering from Israeli territory, I'll remind you, means that Israel is going above and beyond its obligations under international law to allow humanitarian aid to reach the people of Gaza. There is no obligation under international law to allow one's own territory to be used to deliver supplies to enemy-held territory across a hostile frontier. Definitely no international precedent of that. We're going above and beyond our obligations as part of our diplomatic undertakings and concern for civilians in Gaza. But the plan is that the Kerem Shalom crossing will be open only temporarily. This is not a permanent solution as far as we are concerned.
Is from Emily Rose of Reuters. Could we get an update on a potential hostage deal? Also, what is the expected hike in import prices from the disruption of incoming shipping to Israel?
Emily, your first question on the hostages, I'm afraid I can't comment on sensitive negotiations that may be ongoing to secure the release of the hostages. These are sensitive issues with human lives in the balance, and the less we say, the better. We'll just remind you that Israel had hoped that the previous hostage release pause would continue. And just as Hamas started this war on October 7th, it restarted this war on December 1st when it decided to terminate the hostage release pause, not release 10 hostages on the last day, not release all the women and children as it was obligated to do so, and to resume rocket fire towards Israeli cities. We already had enough violent Palestinian criminals in our jails lined up to secure the extension of that hostage release pause by a few more days, and we think it's regrettable that Hamas decided to terminate that framework and resume hostilities against us. As we've said from the very beginning, we have two main goals in this war: to bring back all the hostages, no one left behind, and to destroy the Hamas terror state in response to 10/7. And we will, of course, welcome any opportunity to get hostages out of Gaza. That is a top priority for us. But beyond that, I can't comment on sensitive negotiations other than to say we're committed to that pledge. There will be no one left behind. And everyone in here, I'm wearing this dog tag around my neck to remind us that none of us are free until all of them are free. As for your question about the Houthi terror pirate threat, I have no immediate data about what the economic repercussions of that terror piracy would be. We, of course, welcome the international coalition of 10 navies to repel the Houthi terror pirate threat. This is a threat not just to Israel, but to global maritime trade, to the peace and security of international. With the latest figures, since Hamas declared war on October 7, over 12,500 rockets have been fired at Israel. 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 Over 12,500 rockets have been fired at Israel.